how you should test a substantive procedure, or how you should perform your substantive procedure. Alright, so firstly, let's go back to understanding what is the meaning of substantive procedure. Okay, when we talk about the substantive procedure or substantive test, this is the process. Okay, this is the process done by auditors, in order to identify any error. It can either error or corruption or misstatement that has been done by those who were responsible for preparing a financial statement, or those who were responsible for preparing any documents that they were preparing during the year. So when we perform a substantive procedure, we want to be sure that whatever that has been recorded is very correct, and the risk that there is a misstatement is very low. So this is the main reason how we should perform a substantive procedure. Alright, so the process of performing substantive procedure is simple, means that the auditor have to check all those documents and financial statement. So now the question is, how should we perform a substantive procedure? Or if you are given a question, how are you going to answer a question which is related to a substantive procedure? Alright, firstly, what I want to give you a clarity about a substantive procedure is that what you have to know is that there is no steps when we perform a substantive procedure. There is no steps that has been laid down that you have to go to step number 1. However, the process or the way that you are going to answer this question, it must be at least cover everything that has need to be checked. It doesn't matter whether the financial, the auditor first check the financial statement, or the auditor firstly check the other document. It doesn't matter. Alright, so I'm going to give you example when we perform a substantive procedure on a revenue cycle. Okay, revenue cycle. Alright, so how do we perform a substantive procedure, or if we want to check if there is anything that has been determined in revenue cycle? Alright, so what I'm going to say now is a basic which you have to apply according to the scenario that you have been given. Alright, the first thing that we have to do when we check on a revenue cycle, remember the revenue is the same as what? As sales. So we are performing a substantive procedure on revenue cycle. We want to be sure that all sales that has been recorded are very correct. So how are we going to do that? Okay, number 1, you need to compare the overall level of revenue against previous year or prior year and what? And budget. Then after you have done that, you have to investigate any significant fluctuations. Alright, let me explain this point. In other words, what they're saying is that what we have to do, we have to take the revenue for the current year and the revenue for the previous year. Then after that, we compare with the amount that we have budget for revenue. Remember, before we record the actual revenue, we firstly budgeted as a company that, okay, this year we are expecting so much. All right. Then after that, when you determine all those balances, you need to investigate if there is a significant fluctuations. In other words, they are saying that you have to check if there is changes that does not make sense, or that the changes that have a higher rate. Let me give you example. Let's say, for example, you are having a company that usually make a profit of 200 rand. Then on the following year, the company just make 1 million. That's a significant fluctuation. The difference between those profit does not make sense, which means that we have to figure out what happened, how that amount has come so far. So this is how we should perform a substantive procedure. That's the point number 1 when we perform a substantive procedure on revenue. Second, we need to check that. So if you're answering on your examination or on your test, the first point that you have to write is the one that I show you. Then after that, the second point, now you are commenting according to what? To the scenario that you have been given. If you find that on the scenario that you have been given, you find that there is a higher significant fluctuation, or there is a higher difference between the amount of budget and the amount of what? Of revenue, you need to comment about that. It's either you state that maybe, for example, on a scenario, in most cases, on a scenario of auditing, in most cases, you will find that the scenario that you have been given, there is a problem. Remember, if there is no problem, you can't be tested. That's what you have to know. You can't be tested if there's no problem. So normally you're gonna find that there's a corruption that happened, or there is a amount that does not exist that has been recognized as a what? As a revenue, or there is an amount that does not meet requirements of IFRS 15, which does not meet a requirement of IFRS 15, but you will find that the amount has been recorded, which means that that amount can make what? A significant fluctuation. All right, so let's go to the second one. The second one, what you have to do, you need to calculate. You need to calculate the gross profit, the gross profit margin, and compare this to the previous year. Then the last part is the same as the first one. And after you have compared the profit margin for the current year and the previous year, you need to investigate if there is any significant fluctuation. For example, when we talk about the profit margin, you know that it's like when you're calculating the percentage that they charge according to the profit. Okay, let's say, for example, this company profit margin is 10%. Then you find that on the previous year it was 10%. Then you find that on the current year, now the profit margin is 80%, which means that they are making 80% from the cost of sales. So that's a significant fluctuation. Why? Because from 10% to 80% does not make sense. It does not make sense at all, which means that there is a possibility that there is a manipulation of what? Of revenue. They want to manipulate the revenue so that they will be seen as a company that is making what? A higher profit, which is going to mislead investors, all those things. All right, so that's the second point that you have to investigate when you perform substantive procedure under a revenue. Alright, then let's go to the next one. The next one, you need to select a sample on credit note. Then you also have to do what? You also have to trace the original invoice, and you have to ensure that the invoice is correctly removed from sale. Okay, let me give you an explanation for this point. So, in other words, what they're saying is that you have to sample a credit note. What is credit note? Credit note, remember, we create a credit note when the customer returns an item. So we have to investigate that, is it actually happen? Is it the customer return a good and the good is has been removed from sale? Is it the amount removed from sale? We have to check that. Why? Because you will find that the company is been faking what? A credit note. They are claiming that the customer has returned what? A good, so that they will do what? They will manipulate what? A sales amount. So we need to investigate that when we perform what? A substantive procedure. Okay, so which means that after that you need to comment according to the scenario that you have been given. Then the other one, what we have to do, we have to select a sample of trade customer order that has been placed. Then we also have to agree with what? A dispatch note. Okay, let me write this down. We have to sample a trade or receivable customer orders. Remember, we have ordering department, which means that ordering department is created customer order document, which has to be sent to what? To dispatch note. It must be sent to dispatch note. Then after that, it must be sent to a delivery. So after that, the department of company is going to receive a what? An invoice. So we have to check that the amount of credit note, if it's 50 rand, is the same amount of dispatch note, which is 50 rand, and is the same amount of invoice. It must be the same as 50 rand. We need to investigate that. If you find that the dispatch note has made it 30 rand and on invoice is 60 rand and customer order is another amount, which means that is invalid. We have to investigate what happened. So this is how you should perform your substantive procedure. The first point, you have to write the main key. Then after that, you link it with the what? With the scenario. Okay. Then the last procedure that you need to perform, you have to select a sample of dispatch note for both pre and post year end. Then after that, you have to follow this through the sales invoice in the correct accounting period to ensure that the cutoff has been correctly applied. So you need to check a sample of dispatch note together with what? Together with invoice for the prior year and for the current year. And after that, you have to be ensure that the invoice that has been recorded in the accounting book are correctly applied according to the principle of cutoff. Remember, the principle of cutoff said that if the sales happen in the current year, must be recorded in the current year. So that's the principle of cutoff. So this is the procedure of how you should perform your substantive procedure. Guys, remember, substantive procedure does not have order. Substantive procedure does not have order. So it doesn't matter which point you have started with. As long as at the end, each and every step will be part of your answer. So that will be okay. So that's what you have to do, guys, when you perform a substantive procedure. You need to check all those documents. Whatever the topic that you will be asked about substantive procedure, what you need to do is to create a point which is linked with what? With the documents that is related to that part that you are doing. If you are requested to perform a substantive procedure on PPE item, you know that what you have to check, those validation, like for example, you need to check whether the company has actually purchased that asset, which means that you're going to check the document. You also have to check the issue of registration of an asset. Is it assets belong to the company? So you need to check all those. The order in substantive procedure, it does not matter, as long as at the end the auditor will be able to express the opinion whether there is any error or misstatement that has been determined. So I hope you learned something. So don't forget to subscribe, guys. I will see you to the next lesson. Thank you.